Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. Welcome to 2023. It hasn't gone sideways yet. We've got at least 2 or 3 more days before that happens. So with me tonight, we have Tracy Baggiano. How you doing, Tracy?
Doing good so far this year.
It's been a great year so far. Both days have been
Yes.
adequate. And
So
along
far, so
with us
good.
as well, Mala Mahadevan. How you doing, Mala?
Doing well. Happy New Year, everyone. Pleased to be here.
Yeah. And for folks who are new to Shop Talk, this is basically, normally it's water cooler style discussion after a Monday of work. Hopefully you didn't have to do much work today, given that this was New Year's Day observed. But we're here just because, in case you had to work. Got a few things I want to talk about tonight. And of course, this is chat driven, which means chat, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, comments, snarky responses, intense criticism, go ahead and drop that in chat. And maybe not as much intense criticism. I don't know if my heart can take it. But all the rest of it, let's roll with the punches. So, first thing I want to talk about. TriPass has a call for speakers. In case you're here, you probably are familiar with the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. Well, we have a sessionized link for our call for speakers. There are 3 regular meetings almost every month. One of them is the Advanced DBA group. One of them is the main meeting. One of them is BI and Data Science. The main meeting, we're looking at going back to in-person, probably starting in April, maybe in March. We'll see. Still have to work that out. But we're hoping to do in-person for that meeting, or hybrid, for that meeting going here on out. So I'll bring the laptop, we'll bring the camera, we'll have the capture card. It'll all be like a couple years ago. For the Advanced DBA and BI Data Science groups, they are currently online only. Should we find a venue, then we can adjust that and make it that one of those hybrid as well. But for now, we've got maybe one venue. I think I've got it, but I have to confirm it. I have to make sure that all the work is in place. And in the meantime, if you want to present for the Advanced DBA group or for the BI and Data Science group, that link that I dropped in chat, that is the best way to do it. It is the sessionized URL for our user group. You can select if you want to present on that 2nd Tuesday for the Advanced DBA group, that 4th Tuesday for the BI and Data Science group. We are definitely looking for speakers for both of those groups. The main meeting is pretty well covered for this year, so we're in good shape on that one. It's the other 2 that we'd really like to get a few more volunteers to present on topics of relevant interest. So get that in. We would definitely appreciate it. Look forward to seeing some good talks. And if you have any questions about whether your particular talk might be relevant to Advanced DBA or to BI and Data Science, hey, reach out. We're happy to coach along in that respect. So definitely get your bids in today. The next thing I do want to talk about is SQL Saturday. We started reaching out to different venues in the area, trying to host our SQL
I'll
Saturday.
follow up with the one I was on, Kevin. It's not out yet. So the new year just started. That option is still open. I'll follow up tomorrow.
Okay. Yep, that's fair. I reached out to a few venues and got no's. So unfortunately, the place that I really wanted to do, Wake Tech RTP, not going to work. They're not doing weekend events at this point. And reached out to a couple other Wake Techs, and they're all not willing to host it for various reasons. So probably not doing it at Wake Tech. We will look at other places as well. And if I'm able to find something within the next, say, 3 to 4 weeks, then we can host it. If we can't find anything by the beginning of February, I think that puts a serious risk on hosting a Sequel Saturday in 2023. But we'll do what we can, try to find a venue, scout it out, and host a Sequel Saturday, if at all possible. So did want to lay out that pretty bad news, but it's not the end of Sequel Saturday for Raleigh. We'll keep looking.
The problems we have are similar, the same problems most people are having. So it's not new or unusual to us. It's just the climate we are in.
Yeah. A lot of places that might have been willing to host in the past are more hesitant now, and getting a venue.
Mm-hmm.
We may have a few more doors opened up now because we are a 501c3. So I might push that angle a little bit. But if you're really looking forward to a Sequel Saturday in Raleigh, we're gonna do what we can. Just a matter of getting everything situated and making sure that, first of all, we have a place willing to host us that is large enough to host. So, been the classic trouble. I will say a little behind the scenes, we're probably looking at a small Sequel Saturday, probably something like 4 tracks or so. Not necessarily, I don't want to have to say no to any speakers. Historically, that's why we've had anywhere from about 6 to 8 tracks, is so that we have the broader array of speaker options. But as far as venues go, it seems like getting 6 classrooms, not likely. Getting 4 is probably going to be a fair amount easier. But even then, I'm batting 0 for whatever so far. So, yeah, we'll see. So, next topic. Mala, you wanted to talk a little bit about Sequel Bits.
So, Sequel Bits is a UK-based conference. Most of you may have heard of it. They also have a virtual option to attend since the past 2 years. This year they are out in Wales, in England. If you want to travel, that's a cool location out in the country. The English countryside always been I wanted to visit. I'm not going this year because it's just too expensive for me to go out of pocket, and place Kevin and I work is not going to pay for us to go. So I'm not going, but I'll be speaking virtually. I'll be speaking on 2 non-tech subjects. One is on ageism in tech, and the second one is on cross-cultural communication. So if you happen to attend, please consider attending my class if you're interested, if either of those topics are of interest.
And I'll be attending in person because I don't know, I'm paying for mine. Work's not paying for me to go either. But hey, it's Wales, Sequel Bits, Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know about Dungeons and Dragons, but it's Dungeons and Dragons. But I'll be doing a different mental health talk than I've done before about leaders helping their employees with Eugene, Kevin's cohort on Sequel Data Partners podcast, and then doing one on DBA checks and security audits, because security audits are fun, which I talked about security with Mala on the Data Wit podcast thing online. So shouting out 2 podcasts that you should go watch. Or listen. Watch and listen.
Watch and or listen.
Either one, yeah. There we go.
Maybe both.
I said it both ways. Yeah.
So
go watch all those things.
So that's sequelbits.com. That is definitely a paid conference. But you can attend in person. You can also attend remotely.
You can attend in person on Saturday for free.
That is true.
Insane.
So that last day, that is the free day. Other days,
you can see my DBA checks presentation for free on Saturday.
So if that's not worth a trip to Wales, I don't know what is.
Yeah. What else could you want?
So that's coming up.
Oh, we
when
know
is
you're
that
already
again?
in Wales. It could be in Wales already. particular
When is
thing.
SQL Bits?
February,
March.
March, March 14th through 18th, I think.
Okay. So March 14th through the 18th. Yep. In ICC Wales. It is coming up. Check that out. Mala dropped the link already, SQLBits.com. And maybe worth in attendance. So, next thing that I want to talk about. We're burning through some topics tonight. But this is something that Daniel Hutmacher dropped just about a month ago. And I've been waiting until I had time to mess around with this. I upgraded to SQL Server 2022 on this machine. Going to do it on the laptops eventually. And figured I also wanted to try out this new database. This is a demo database that is Chicago, Illinois parking tickets. So Daniel's put together database based on parking tickets issued between 1997 and 2017. So I think I saw Solomon in chat. There may even be a ticket from Solomon. I don't know. I'm not going to assume that Solomon has ever had a traffic citation, but at least in Chicago. But you know what? If you did have a traffic citation in Chicago, Illinois, then you might find some info in this database. It's not going to have anything. I don't know if it has license plates. Let's find out. I actually have the database installed, so I can share a window. That's the window I want to share. And we can see a little bit of the shape of that database. It is roughly 16 gigs for the data file. It is just about 5 gigs for the log by default. Now, you can definitely shrink that log size, especially if you're not doing any edits, but it is about 16 gigs. And if we wanted to see what's taking up all the space in the database, check out disk usage by table. And we can already see that there are a couple of hefty tables. The tickets.parking violations is the one that we care about. License plates. So yeah, you should be able to see license plates if you know somebody's license plate and state. So we have the state, we have the plate type, we have the vehicle make, and they actually don't have the plate itself. So I suppose that might have been a security thing.
Are there any foreign keys and related? Is there a schema diagram, Kevin?
There are some foreign keys in here, and in the link, Daniel has a list of what those attributes look like, what some of the tables look like. But if we look, for example, at the parking violations table, we can see that there are definitely quite a few keys. So the parking violations themselves, probably the major fact of this table. We have the location, and one of the things he talked about was there's location and there's location text, because location text is very messy. So this is what location text looks like. If I look, for example, for this ID, (160) North LaSalle, and it is also this location. South LaSalle Street, 160. Here's the zip code. Here's the ward and track. So this is the normalized version of the table. This is the one that you would want to look at for understanding information, the geocoded latitude and longitude and all the details. But one of the things that Daniel pointed out was the location text, like those locations may not always be perfect. So he wanted to keep the original text, have that be available just in case you looked at it and said, that doesn't look right. This ID should actually be here. Or here's an example where the location text ID doesn't actually combine back to a specific location. So O'Hare Airport, there's no location here. It was probably somebody somebody did not notice that the white zone is for loading and unloading only. So then there are other tables in here for different types of violation. So we have a violation ID, and we can see that O'Hare Airport violation 1, parking and standing prohibited. So they parked in the white zone. We can see the officer who wrote up that ticket. So officer 32024. Which is officer 000307. I don't know who that officer is, but that might be a badge number. Or it might be something totally different. So not all of these tables are going to, basically, they're not going to relate to personal information. And police have special consideration when dealing with personal information. Where, for example, one of the data sets that I love to use is Wake County restaurant inspections. And the restaurant inspectors, their names are in that data set. So you get to know who was the person who inspected this restaurant. That's public information. They're public employees. Police that doesn't follow the same rules. And I'm sure that you can come up with reasons as to why that is. But we have things like the fines, the late fees, how much was due, did they need to collect on it? So all in all, it's a pretty interesting data set built around parking violations especially, and then this accounting table. The accounting table gives you an idea of how much a person paid, how much was written off, how much was due, and the notice level. So different notice levels are going to indicate when you're violated, you're on the boot list. So they're putting a boot on your car. If you appeal, you have a hearing and said, okay, well, you're found liable for citation. After a while, unpaid tickets are sent to a collections agency for pennies on the dollar, and they try to collect the money from you. And then people who really don't pay, the city wants to suspend your driver's license. So we have a notice level of 5 for this particular ticket number that was $30 that somebody just did not pay. So that plate, this ticket number, back in January 1st of 1996, the city intended to suspend the license because they didn't pay $30, which by this point with all the fines and stuff, I don't know, it's probably like $8,000. Along with that data set, Daniel included some interesting bits in here. So you can get the community areas. So there are spatial results kind of breaking down the different areas in Chicago. And you could say, okay, well, which districts, which areas are most likely to have fines, which areas are most likely to have people not pay their parking tickets. There's population by census block and by zip code. So we have the different census blocks and population. We have socioeconomic indicators, excuse me. That's per community, and communities are in this community areas. So again, spatial results. So we can see the different communities. And then a few measures that were taken and included in here. So you can try to stratify some of this data by certain indicators. You can also break it down into the wards, so you can find out which ward is the most corrupt. It's Chicago, so they're all corrupt, but the question is which one is most corrupt. And so on. So for about 25 gigs of disk space, it's an 8 gig database backup. It's about 16 gigs for the data file, and you'll need an extra 5 gigs for the log file by default. You can get this data set for Chicago parking data, real data, dive into it. I am going to look at it for future presentations just to have something else, some real data set that's kind of fun and interesting. I did live in Chicago from 98 to 2002, so yes, I should absolutely have a few records in that data set. It's difficult to live in Chicago and not get some sort of parking ticket. That's fair. That's fair. So yeah, that data set is available. It's one of the nice things is that Daniel makes it available for free, just at the bottom of this link here. And he points out, hey, how do you pay for all the bandwidth if people are downloading 8 gigabyte files? And essentially, it's on Cloudflare R2, where there's no egress cost, which to me is absolutely insane. Because hosting the 8 gig file is 20 cents a year, because, all right, it's like 2.5 to 3 cents per gig, sort of like S3. But then downloads don't actually cost anything, which means, hey, I could have 500,000 people download it, and it's still 20 cents a year. So definitely better than what you'd get out of Azure or out of AWS. So could you share what egress cost means? Yeah, for sure, Rick. So when you're working with public clouds, assume that everything comes with a cost. So I'm putting data into your cloud. There may be an ingress charge. Ingress meaning the network bandwidth to move data into your storage provider, your cloud service provider. Most of the time, that's free. Storing the data on the cloud provider costs you money. Now, for something like a blob storage or S3, that's anywhere from about 2 to 3 cents per gigabyte. So not very expensive at all. Retrieving data from a cloud service provider is called egress. So you're taking it out from AWS or from Azure and either moving it to another service provider or you're downloading it to a computer. But basically, those are network bandwidth costs of moving data outside of that cloud provider's network. And that's one of the costs that people often forget about when planning out how expensive a particular operation is going to be. Because if you're moving data within the same data center or within the same region even, usually that's free. For Amazon, it's usually free. For Azure, it's usually free. It's when you move across regions or outside of a region that you have to pay for that bandwidth. Now, the bandwidth isn't typically very expensive, but depending on how many terabytes of data you're pushing, that may be a significant amount. So I think I'd have to double check, but I think it's something like 1/10 of a cent per gigabyte for AWS and for Azure. It might be less than that, but that's the number that's sticking in my head. So, if you assume that you have an 8 gigabyte download from S3, that might cost you 0.8 of a cent. So my downloading that database would cost 0.8 of a cent. And then if somebody else downloads it, that's another 0.8 of a cent. And those are extra costs that you don't necessarily think about. But apparently for the service that Daniel is using, he's not paying that egress charge. So good on him. City of Chicago had a scam. Maybe they still do. I'm going to assume because it's Chicago, they still have it. Where they would post signs at night saying, street cleaning this side of vehicle, cleaning the street from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. on whatever day, like Tuesday, where it was often the next day. So many of us wouldn't see the sign in time. Yeah, you post it late at night, and then boom, in the morning. Got towed once being parked on a street late at night. And that area was no parking starting at 2 a.m. And clearly we were heading home after that. Oh, that will happen. Louisville traffic cops had a max speeding ticket limit per cop that every one of them. Oh, yeah, the quotas. So a minimum speeding ticket limit.
Minimum, Kevin is right. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, not max.
So a lot of places. Oh, go ahead, Mala. Yeah, a lot of places will have. There's debate. because I've talked to a fair number of police who said, no, there aren't any quotas. And then I've talked to other people in those same areas who say, yes, there definitely were quotas. At different times, there may be minimum requirements. And I know that there are townships, especially you get smaller towns, where a fair amount of the revenue comes from citations, traffic citations. So the license plate numbers specifically are not in the database, Solomon. They have hashes instead. I guess they don't have the actual license plates, or Daniel didn't include them. Doing 45 on a deserted side road and the cop admitted it. Yeah, but you know that speed limit was 35.
I've been married to someone who took the citation from the thing where they clean the sidewalks ticket and just crumpled it up and threw it on the ground.
Nobody
Yeah,
there.
great.
I mean, okay, I'm 10 miles over your limit, but there's nobody there. So
Yeah.
I
Now,
was
as
dumbfounded. I was really, stunned that there would even be a cop on that street, and what were they doing?
that'll happen every once in a while. Pop out of nowhere. Yeah. So in Tracy, in that case, just crumpling up the citation. I mean, eventually.
It's in a different state, so he just crumbled it up and like outside his sister's house, and you'd think his cousins would say something. They're on the police force in the town.
I don't know.
But,
I don't know. Because if that's local, at some point you get the summons.
Yeah, but like it is up in New Jersey, and it's like we got ticketed for the sweeping the cleaning the sidewalk sweeping thingy, and it's a static sign, so he just didn't see it.
Yeah.
And they just threw it on the ground. I was like, no, but we should pay that. What do I know? I'm younger. I don't know nothing.
All right. So as long as you just never go to New Jersey.
It's his name, not mine.
That's fair. That's true.
His car he goes up there all the time. Nothing's no. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, then at least in my time, that was 20 years ago when I used to live in New York City. New Jersey used to have the highest car insurance premiums.
Oh yeah, it's
highest in the
high up
country.
there.
Highest in the country.
My sister-in-law went without a car for like 20 years before she finally learned how to drive.
Right. I don't know if that's still the case, but it used to be pretty bad.
Where I volunteer at in Graham, we don't park outside the courthouse because like the lady comes by with her chalk and mark your cars to see if you've been there for 2 hours. She does it religiously all day long. So we set our timers to go and move our cars if we park on the street where she might chalk our cars because she's pretty good at giving tickets.
IT photo taker, welcome in. First time here. Any reason my question did not show up? So your chat did show up. So if you want to drop your question in here, that's the best place to put it. It might be if you ask it on the meetup chat. So there's technically a chat for every meetup. And if you ask it in there, I'm not necessarily looking at during shop talk, so that would be why we don't see it there. All right, looking for a recommendation for deduplication tools. No validation or deduplication rules set up in their customer table. Asked to start looking for duplicates. I know how to get exact duplicates, but want to look more at fuzzy logic. So I've never seen a commercial product that really does or is marketed toward deduplication. I have seen on occasion, there are algorithms that will allow you to do similarity for words. So you can get a feeling for nearness in phrases. And Integration Services does have a fuzzy matching component, which is really slow and doesn't work great. But when looking for duplicates, if you're talking customers, that's a good question. So Tracy or Mala, have you ever worked with anything where trying to sort out duplicates in personal information or addresses or anything like that?
Not really, I'm afraid.
I have, but it's not very easy.
Yeah, for address.
Logic is hard. It is hard.
True.
I remember at one place using that address validator API that USPS has, and going with that one, like how many matches that find this is closed, that kind of a thing. I think that's one way to do it. That I recall that I was working with a programmer who had that API going, and that used to find the closest match to the postal services address and say this is this. So that was one way.
Yeah,
I don't know how to use it. Yeah, I worked with somebody who did. I don't know personally how to use it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
as far as addresses go, I know that Melissa Data has APIs, which may be what you're talking about, Mala.
Yeah.
They do some APIs where you can put in an address and it'll give you the USPS canonical address. That's where you'll go to a website and you'll put in your address and it'll be like, did you really mean this one? And they're usually websites that are doing that usually are using Melissa Data. They work closely with the U.S. Postal Service and make those addresses available. So that might help you on the address front. When dealing with names, when dealing with individual persons like that, yeah, I have not seen anything commercial that will take a set and provide these are likely candidates.
No, names are very tricky. Names are I don't know if it's even possible to make anything based on names, just especially if your database has a list of global names, which is increasingly the case. There are so many different ways that names can be spelled. Like for example, if I had a name and an address thing in an Indian website, I would probably not even fill in my last name. It's just going to be my first name because people don't use last names very much where I'm from. So that's just an example. So if you have things like that, you're not going to be able to. There are multiple standards around the world. Different countries have different standards for this. So it's going to be insanely hard to make anything standard for names.
Agreed. And yeah, if you're
Yeah.
looking at, hey, this is W Kerr Street, and I really want West Kerr Street, that is where Melissa Data does a
And
good
help.
job.
Yeah.
And so,
I think when you get to names, like people's names, you're going to end up with more than just names to help you validate it. Like if you're trying to combine it, you're going to end up with another data point to help you figure out if, like, my name, if Tracy Baggiano over here is the same as that Tracy Baggiano, because I discovered at one point that T Baggiano at Gmail is not me. It's someone else had that address. I have to do TA Baggiano. So there's another Tracy Baggiano out there. But this, so you have to figure out, a different data point to use besides just names, because people can have the exact same name.
yep. And for addresses,
So you're going to have to throw birthday in there or social security number or address or something else to make it even more unique to be able to filter things down and stuff.
Yep. But as far as address goes, that's probably the best place to look in terms of commercial product that provides that service. So you can upload files or use an API. They had for a while SQL Server Integration Services components, so you could get a plugin that worked. I think actually it might have been through Pragmatic Works. But if you had a license for their API, for the Melissa Data API, then somebody had a plugin for integration services that would allow you to take rows that are in a data set and feed them through as a lookup component almost. So that is generally the gold standard of address lookup and address validation. So that would definitely be the first place that I would look. I don't know how expensive it is. I've never had to price it out, but most likely it's going to be fairly expensive because that's how things go.
Yeah, it was
$4.
expensive. I recall the shop where I bought it.
Yeah, it looks
But
like
it would really help you if you're working somewhere where they do a lot of mass mailing and they get so many undelivered stuff, because a lot of addresses are what people put in are not exactly correct. So depending on your scenario, it might actually save you money even if you have to pay for it.
Their website says they do name, email, and phone matching as well. If it's U.S. and Canada stuff,
well,
U.S.
all right.
contact matching. Melissa data. So
Yeah, that's there's a possibility there, and it's all commercial data. Okay, so for commercial data, yeah, Melissa data is a good option for that. You could also use Google Maps API lookups or OpenStreetView. And OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap has an API as well, which allows you to do lookups based off of an address, and it tries to be smart. Similarly, Google's Maps API also tries to be smart about it. The Google Maps API, I have written Python code to work with it. There used to be a package in R. I think there is still a package in R that works with Google Maps, but it requires your API key. So Google Maps is paid for API lookups. OpenStreetMaps is free, but limits you in the number of calls you can make at a certain amount of time. I think Google has a free tier where you're allowed a certain number of lookups before you have to use the API key per day, but that might have changed. So if it's all commercial data like that, those are additional options. Melissa data, like I said, is the gold standard. That is the place where I'd look at that up front and start with it. If it's too expensive, you can try rolling your own using the Google Maps API or using OpenStreetMap and get a fair percentage of it easily, because you can type in 10 West Kerr Street or given that we're talking North Carolina, Kerr, and get to a canonical address. So car. Okay, gotcha. I started with the German Care and then realized, no, wait, we've got to reshift the vowels. So that's probably the place where I'd look if it was commercial facilities. You might also find for pay data sets that are basically commercial white page or yellow pages. They would also provide you with canonicalized addresses usually, but that would, I think, be like a third tier idea where if the first sets of ideas just don't work out, here's an option. So very helpful. Great. Glad we were able to wing something here on Shop Talk. That's our definition. We're glad when we can wing something. Next thing I want to talk about, database resolutions. It's a new year, and wanted to see anybody had any resolutions, anything that they wanted to do. That could be, hey, it's time to upgrade. SQL Server 2022 is out. Or time to try something new, rebuild some scripts, learn some new topic. Any thoughts? Anything you want to try out?
For me, I made one resolution that I will not buy any training in bulk, which I usually make a resolution to watch and never end up watching. So I've wasted enough money on that, and this year I decided I'm not going to drop any more money on courses like that. Basically, my track record is I bought one on SQL Skills and then another on Brent Ozar, and I used neither of them much.
Right.
So there is no time. So I decided that I'm not going to do anything like that. That's my resolution. I want to learn. I want to learn. I have somebody at work who's helping me learn C sharp, and that's going rather well. I wanted to learn that. So I also want to learn Python after that. Those are two programming languages that I wanted to add to my resume, and I'm planning to keep it simple, not make it over ambitious, and then set myself up to fail. Not to mention read a few books, and reading is not that much of a struggle for me. I like to read, so it comes naturally. So I have a bunch of books that I want to read. They're right here, so I'll show them in a second.
All right. So while Mala's getting her books, any resolutions from you, Tracy? In the meantime, Solomon says my resolution was not to make any resolutions. Succeeded and failed at the same time.
I do not make resolutions. I make goals.
That's fair. Any
Big-
goals
big
database related?
Difference. Big difference. First at work, we were not running any more desupported versions of SQL Server. So I go all the way back to 2014 right now. We are getting off the desupported versions of SQL Server. That's one. Two, we're going to have some security.
Some security? Not all the
Yeah.
security yet, but just some of the security.
We're going to have security. I mean, just, like my boss is not going to be able to get on things, for example.
I mean, that's a good start.
It's a good start, yeah. But other people as well. Like, we're not randomly going to, give this person access. Why? I mean, I don't know. People just, do whatever they're asked. They don't ask questions. But, and there's a whole bunch of security that needs to be done. What else? And I got to write a couple presentations, like, by March. That's a goal. And I need to learn some Azure stuff. Other goal. So I think I might actually do some Azure certifications. I don't know. I haven't done certifications since like 2016. It's been a while. I don't know if I actually want to actually do a certification or not. I haven't really decided that part yet. That's kind of iffy goal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of a way to force me to learn it. Because it gives you a structured thing to learn.
Right.
That's the only reason I did certifications before, was kind of give me a structured format to learn stuff. I could prove to myself that I learned it, not for the actual certification itself, but to kind of give me a path to learn stuff. So I think that was all I had in my thing that was related to databases anyways.
So the books I was talking about, one is here. This is called 97 Things Every Data Engineer Should Know. Collective Wisdom from the Experts. This book is from O'Reilly. It's a good book. And it's the kind of book you can read like one chapter every day and learn a little bit more. That kind of book. So I like the structure of this book a lot. So every day before I log in at work, if I read something, then that adds up to my learn in an easy way. So that's one book. Second one is Shell of an Idea: The Untold History of PowerShell by Don Jones. This has been with me for a while, and I think I'm going to like reading it. So on how PowerShell evolved as a product. It's a little bit like a story, and it's interesting to read. And the last one is Designing Data-Intensive Applications. Martin Kleppmann. I don't know of this author, but the book looks interesting. So those are the 3 books I have that I plan to read in the next few months.
Yeah, I saw a review of that last book, and I forget if it was whose review it was, But basically, very good book, with the downside being that you can tell it was written in 2016,
Oh my.
or that it was written a few years ago. So you have a lot of patterns and ideas that were getting formed and are still relevant today, but
Uh-huh.
not quite as relevant as a few years ago when that book was written. If there's a new edition of it, that would be excellent. The author knows what he's talking about. He is he was at one of the major companies. I forget which one of FAMG, and working extensively with extreme scale. So this is a person who knows what he's talking about and has written well on the topic, but many of the tool choices, many of the ideas are going to be what was a smart idea several years ago. That may be the risk you run into with it.
Interesting. Really
And-
interesting.
All right, looking back at chat here, IT Photo Taker says, I mainly do ETL development, so my goal is to write more integrations in code rather than Boomi or MuleSoft. Yeah, it's pretty easy to write these sorts of scripts. And if you're using a language like PowerShell, if you're using Python, or moving into C#, F#, something like that, there's a lot of power in those languages. A lot of things that take some time to learn, but that you're going to be able to do in ways which the drag and drop UIs won't allow you to do. Some of the smarter tooling will allow you to combine scripts with the integration tool itself. Informatica does that. Integration Services does that. I'm not sure if MuleSoft does or not. But that may be an intermediate option where, okay, start by writing scripts that execute within the context of the UI of the integration job. But eventually,
Is Boomi also an ETL tool? I haven't heard of it. Boomi.
yeah, that one's new to me as well, but not. I see. So it's integrated PaaS solution for cloud-connected businesses. All right, maybe something I'll have to check out in the future. And okay, Boomi used to be from Dell. They just sold off. That was fair. That's fair. So learning that kind of a language, integration jobs, ETL types of jobs they're not trivial by any means. Especially if you get more complicated error handling structures, if you get more sophisticated scenarios. But when you start writing that as code, you realize that much of this code can be say turned into functions, turned into repeatable components, and reused very easily, which has always been a problem with things like SQL Server Integration Services. That's why you had BEML. That's why you had basically a scripting language to create packages to execute. And Informatica had its own scripting process. So you have that gap, I think, and that's why companies shifted away from these sorts of drag and drop tools. Especially as you move to larger companies, they tend to shift away from those sorts of tools and into just writing straight code, simply because we hit a scenario where integration services just isn't working for us because we need X and it doesn't provide X. So learning how to write code, I recommend that for pretty much anybody. I frankly don't care that much what language you write it in. Just learning a language, learning multiple languages helps you develop skills, helps you develop a capacity for formal logic for rigor. And Solomon posted a couple pictures of the types of street cleaning signs that you get in Chicago. Rick wants to write reviews. Has anybody else published a book recently? We'll see. We'll see.
Anyone wants to write a book, I'd be happy to connect you to the guy in Manning who used to be with Apress before, a good friend of our, actually all of us, Jonathan, who is among the best people you can work for if you want to write a book, and there isn't too many of them.
Yeah, he got me to write 2 books, which is approximately one more than I expected that I would ever write.
Yeah.
If you can get your head around my ETLs, you have mastered ETL. That's just because they're overly complex. Actually, that's because I didn't want to rewrite the same thing 15 times, so I just wrote a bunch of BIML to do it once. But I didn't know BIML that well, so I knew it just well enough to get by, and then I learned more and realized, oh, some of this stuff is dumb, and I tried to rewrite it, and then it worked kind of. Welcome to ETL.
So every day morning they have a bunch of ETLs that I maintain along with another engineer, which were written by Kevin. Every day morning for 3 weeks, that person and I used to get together. Our sole task would be, let's figure this out. It took us 3 weeks, and I'm not sure we still know all of it. We know some of it enough to maintain it, and it works really, really, really well. But to understand all of it takes a long time.
That'll happen. Someday, company archivists or architects in the sense or archaeologists are going to dig through some of the F# code that I've written and be like, what the heck was happening here? But that's the prerogative of being in management. I get to decide, hey, this needs to be an F#. Why? Because it needs to be an F#. It's better that way. Don't ask. Or you don't want to ask because I will happily spend 4 hours telling you all about why. And then you will wish that you had never asked why and just said, yes, okay, fine. So the last thing for tonight. Last item on the list. Got a notification about PyTorch, that the machine learning toolkit for PyTorch was compromised by a supply chain attack right around the end of the year. So sometime between Christmas Day and New Year's Eve, where attackers created a Python package on the PyPy distribution network, the Python package index repository, and called this thing Torch Triton, which happens to be the name of an internal library in PyTorch, but on PyPy, the way that it works in Python is that if you're installing a package that's internal and external, they were saying that that pip will install the remote version by default instead of using the internal package registration. So it'll say, oh, hey, there's a remote package here in PyPy that has this name, so I'm going to pull it down. And as a result, if you installed that bad package, then there was malware that was installed on your computer. And PyTorch did an analysis of the malware. So the group analyzed that malware. Here's the link to it. And they were able to steal certain information. And most importantly, we're also looking for things like secrets that were passed through DNS. So what's interesting is that this malware doesn't exfiltrate its own data. So instead, it's compressing, scrambling, and text encoding the data into a sequence of what looks like server names, which means that they would have like your secret password dot my dot URL, where my dot URL happens to be a server that may be owned by the bad guys. And officially, that just looks like a DNS lookup, and then would return back a 404, or would return back that, oh yeah, this is the if you actually try to make that request, it would return back a 404. But it's just doing DNS lookups for servers that would quietly leak that those secrets. So the way that this follow-up works is that if I own my.url, or in the example here, Sophos uses dodgy.example. And if I own dodgy.example, any DNS lookup to it, I would say, hey, for any DNS requests to dodgy.example, any subdomain under it, talk to this server right here. And so all those requests would come in, that server would be able to collect them, and we would get the different secrets. So you'd know from where that DNS request came, because you'd have the source IP address. You would have the secret itself, because it would be a subdomain, secret, whatever your secret is, .dodgy.example. And as a result, it would be able to pull some interesting information. Kind of interesting that they would do it this way. Makes it less likely, I think, that somebody would catch on of what you're doing. Means that you don't have those. It's not a command and control type of malware. It's not something that is going to accept requests, that'll open up a reverse shell and accept requests. It's not a type of malware that's actively trying to exfiltrate a lot of data. It's not ransomware, but it is clever in its mechanism, I think. So you can read up on that and also learn what to do. PyTorch has already taken some action to shut down the attack. Torch Triton has been replaced on PyPI with an empty package. So if you try to get it now, it's going to be an empty package. If you had installed Torch Triton before December 30th, after the 25th, but before the 30th, make sure to, it looks like you might be able to perform a pip update, and that would be okay. So you can find at the list what exactly how you can tell if you were compromised. If you didn't install the nightly release of PyTorch in that time frame, you're not going to be compromised. So fortunately, it was a short time frame. Not many people are likely to have been hit. But if you do mess with the nightly builds, then you might want to regenerate any SSH keys, update any public keys, replace any secrets that you may have used. So all in all, kind of interesting. Hopefully nobody here got hit with that. And it also puts us near the top of the hour. So we did it. We successfully lasted an entire hour here on Shop Talk. We're going to wrap things up for tonight. Remember that our first Advanced DBA meeting of the year is going to be next Tuesday. The meetup for that will be posted, meetup.com/trypass. It's not up yet. We've got to get our speaker to give us the title and abstract, and then we'll post it up. The main meeting, third Tuesday, Data Science and Business Intelligence, fourth Tuesday. Both of those are already up. So come join us 3 weeks this year, or this month rather. 3 weeks this month. Shop Talk will be in another 2 weeks. And until we see each other again, everyone, take care.